Good afternoon, all. Welcome back to the Panther Pod and our second in this series of 19 debates between Jordan Williams and Sam Muniz. The last debate between these two actually broke a Panther Pod record for listenership. So, of course, when something's a hit out of the gate, you got to make a sequel. So here are our moderators for Williams v. Muniz 2. We have Cole Wilson and Dylan Cordoba.
Welcome back. So let's start with the first question. Let's go with Sam because you're on the left, closer to me.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Begin the timing.
So each participant's a minute and a half to respond to each question, and then we'll shift to the other to get the other side of the story.
A minute and a half? No, let's definitely do it 45 seconds.
We did a minute and a half last time.
Let's lower it because
45 seconds.
At least our minute.
Minutes.
Just interrupt me if I go over. I want to let Sam talk.
I'll let you know.
Make the rules on the fly.
Yeah.
No, that's a 15-second warning if I do this.
All right. We'll start with some juicy one.
Okay.
Yeah. So freedom of speech. Where should the line be drawn between protecting freedom of speech and preventing hate speech or misinformation? Sam, this is to you.
I think freedom of speech is an absolute, so there shouldn't really be a line drawn. If you're offended by speech, that's unfortunate. I think that people should be respectful, but at the end of the day, freedom of speech is to have free speech, which is to be able to say whatever one believes. And it's the challenging of ideas that creates a culture where we're able to talk about things. So it's an absolute. There shouldn't be any limit on that.
Okay, Jordan.
I agree. I need to speak in the mic. Sorry. I actually agree with that to most of the extent. My only caveat is that the speech that should be restricted is the speech that is very clearly directly meant to harm someone. So, like, if you're walking down the street and someone just yells, like, a racial slur at you, like, that feels... Because freedom of speech protects you from the government. It doesn't protect you from these hands. Like, that, that meme, right?
Yeah.
Like, freedom of speech is about government censorship and other things, and I believe that should be protected because it's the paradox of inclusion. So even if you don't agree with it, it's still out,
Yeah. So, like, with what you said about, like, someone yelling racial slurs, would you be against, let's say, the KKK or neo-Nazis, let's say, marching down the street? Like, that's what I think it's pretty common now. Like, recently it was in Tallahassee or... you get what I mean. Yeah. Are you against that or are you in support of that? And I'm not saying are you against, like, are you in support of Nazis? Are you saying are you in support of allowing them? If they have all of, like, the regulations and, like... Yeah, proper permits, all that stuff.
So, legally, I believe that if we restrict the rights of the groups that we don't agree with, that can very easily become restricting the rights of the groups that we can agree with and do agree with. However, morally, there's this slogan saying the only good Nazi is a dead Nazi. So, morally, absolutely not. But legally and from a logical perspective, yeah, because then... because I don't like it, they don't like me. Like, if we don't allow one, we can't allow the other. So yes, as much as I hate to agree.
For me, obviously, like I said, you should always try to be respectful of others. So, in terms of government, in terms of government oversight, then I mean they have their right to be allowed to do that, and public opinion, everyone's going to agree that these people, what they're saying is wrong and that it's morally not okay, but it's still a right of theirs to be able to say that thing and then be challenged on that, because if you take that right away, then where's the line drawn? What else is going to be censored by the government? We're giving them that power to be able to say what's right and what's wrong in terms of speaking, and that's a dangerous slope to go down.
So it seems like you guys pretty much agree on that topic, basically.
Yeah, I would say we do.
Yeah. I
Okay.
mean, the government. You should have your. Oh, sorry, Sam. You should have your rights, like that. They're your rights, but that doesn't mean I have to like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, that makes sense to me. So, another topic that's, I mean, it's like very hot in the news right now is
Especially with like government regulating speech.
the TikTok ban, which I'm sure you guys are very well aware of. Just give your thoughts on that, Sam. What do you think?
So, I don't know the exact like details of the actual bill, but I do know that some people have like said that it's kind of like TikTok specific rather than just
like ByteDance,
right. It's very specific to that company rather than limiting data collection on all companies. Like Facebook does it, like Meta, Instagram, all that, all these accounts that do data collecting and sell them. So like that, people can give us all the algorithms and basically influence what we believe or what we see to be true. So in terms of banning TikTok, I don't have any problem with it. But if you want to ban TikTok because they're collecting data, then make sure that all these American companies aren't collecting our data as well, because what they're doing is just as wrong.
Jordan?
Yeah, no, that take is almost exactly what I think. I don't have TikTok. I haven't had one in a long time, but I definitely agree that data collection from companies, while it is happening around us every day and most of it is benign, I do believe that it should be controlled, because for thousands of years we had the right to not be known where we didn't want to be known, and now, like, Walgreens, if they wanted to, they could find your Google search history. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Data collection in itself is mainly benign, but also I don't like the idea of having data collected. So I mainly agree with Sam.
Yeah, I was gonna say like pretty much every website you go on, they're always collecting cookies and data of some sort.
Yeah, and I think the reason they're so like specific with TikTok is because of how influential it is on the youth. But
I think
like,
it would be like more so their main motivation is just that it's like our biggest rival right now.
Well, that for sure. But like in terms of if Facebook was owned by China, I think they still would be like more like heavy on how it's regulated because of the demographic is younger, and it's just like easier to influence in terms
it's so
of like
easy to
social
collaborate
media.
on TikTok. I'm pretty sure a big issue was like being able to gather support for Palestine in that situation. But yeah, there's a younger demographic, and it's probably the number one used app in the world, I would assume. So yeah.
There's also the question of, does this fall under free speech?
Yeah.
Like in the U.S., if you restrict TikTok, that is a major social media platform, and we learned of Mr. Cox.
Yeah.
Round 2, a shout out to Mr. Right?
Clear and present
we
danger.
learned that representative speech is still speech.
Mm-hmm.
So then it becomes very convoluted. But
Is it-
again, I don't really have that much of a nuanced take on it because I don't have TikTok.
Is there a clear and present danger to limit speech?
I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It honestly depends. I mean, they say it's for China, but how? Like, I don't really know anything behind that.
Yeah, it's also the revenue that they make is crazy.
Yeah.
Anyways.
All right, so on to the next question. Has the movement towards wokeism been a force for progress or equality, or has it led to overreach and suppression of free speech? Sam.
Overreach, like overreach in what way?
Well, like, I guess too much. I don't really know how to put into words.
Define wokeism.
Yeah, like I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I don't really understand the
All right.
question.
So, when you want to take this?
I mean, I'm guessing what Cole's getting at is mainly just like I'm guessing you're talking about just liberal talking points and the liberal like base, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
he's asking for your thoughts on that. I'm guessing.
So
And if that
can I see the question?
and if that has been a force for progress and equality as the liberals would hope, or if that has been more of a negative, I guess, in general.
Has wokeism led to overreach and suppression of speech? Okay, I think I understand what you mean. In terms of wokeism being overreach and suppression of speech, I think that just comes back to the freedom of speech question, where it's like, should speech be restricted? And I think that's simply no. Like, in terms of wokeism, like the cancel culture type of thing, yeah, I guess you could say that whole thing is like a suppression of speech, since people get like banned on social media, and it's like the representative speech type of thing. But I don't think that they've been effective in terms of like government, like in terms of the government doing that. But it has happened on like social media, so I guess I could say that it has been it has led to suppression of free speech. But I wouldn't say overreach, like in terms of the government.
Because it's mostly not like the government that's doing the canceling. It's like people,
it's just people. So, and that's just kind of the public opinion thing. You can't really regulate that. So, yeah, that's my thoughts.
I'm more inclined to agree with Sam. Like, even if it's speech that someone may not like, they also have the right. This is something that gets like glossed over a lot. You have the right to say whatever you want to say, but people have the right to respond to that. That's also free speech. So I'm following the same line with Sam. As far as efficacy, I don't think that liberals have done nearly as much as they think they have. But as far as it goes, yeah, I mainly agree with Sam. I don't really believe wokeism is a thing other than like, hello, can you hear me? Okay. I don't really believe wokeism is a thing because, like, look at the legislation. Honestly, the things that they're teaching in schools isn't trying to indoctrinate anyone. It's just the same curriculum that they've reused for many, many years, just slightly altered. So I don't understand the hype.
So would you agree with that? Do you think that wokeism isn't really like a thing? Because that's what you were basically saying, right? Basically.
Yeah, especially in schools.
In a sense.
That it's not really a thing. Like I understand the concept of wokeism, like the idea of like just moving even further past the progress we've already achieved, further to that, to like understanding a new level. Kind of like this whole 1619 theory, or that like everything's tainted by racism, that idea. So I don't agree with it, but I wouldn't say that it's not a thing, but it's just something that we wouldn't see in our day-to-day lives, because that's not something that's, one, we live in Florida, and two, it's not something that's really in like our level of school, like high schools and things like that. Like, I'm sure if we get to college, then we might start to hear more about things like that, but it's not something that's incredibly impactful, unless you're politically driven.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. I literally did, but okay. On to the criminal justice reform and rehabilitation and retribution. Should the focus be more on rehabilitation than on punishment to reduce recidivism? Okay.
Who's starting this one?
Yeah, Sam. Okay, Jordan, you can start first.
All right. I do believe heavily in prison reform because the prison system as it is isn't so much a system so much as it is a cycle. We have one of the highest reincarceration rates, and we could be doing better. How? I don't exactly know. I don't know the nuances of this. I don't know the minutia of this. I know the broad topics of acts of community service. Like, you have to pay to be in prison, in jail in Florida. Like, you get a bill, which is crazy, because then you effectively are forced to do prison labor, which doesn't cover that bill. But you do get billed for your prison stay in Florida. And I feel like that's one of the biggest things that needs to go. But yeah, I think it's broken. Try again. We can do better.
In terms of like criminal justice reform, I think that we do need reform, but not necessarily for the same idea as most people. Like, we have an under-incarceration problem, and I think that's like pretty obvious when you see that. Like, you mentioned how like America has one of the highest rates of reincarceration because we continue to let people out that like do like really violent crimes. Like I'll give you an example. I have some statistics from the FBI that violent crime since 2014 has risen from 360 to 380 per 100,000 people. Murder rates have risen 2 points since 2014. Crime rates are down since 2020, but they've only gone back to pre-pandemic rates. And then crimes in cities like San Francisco is practically encouraged because there's a proposition called Proposition 47, which is that petty theft, which is stealing any items valued under $900, has been completely decriminalized. So you like just don't go to jail for that anymore. So crimes like this are really common in these major cities. My time.
You mentioned violent crime, but then you mentioned theft. Do you mean like armed robbery, or because petty theft doesn't necessarily equate to violence? And the reason they did that, if I recall correctly, was because a lot of the time people commit crimes not out of desire but out of necessity. Like stealing, most people who steal aren't really going after high ticket items. They're going after baby formula. They're going after food. Like people, it's hard to answer this because again, Sam is obviously way more prepared for this question than I am. But like I get where you're coming from, and I definitely agree to an extent.
In terms of like the petty theft, it's not really like things like baby formula. I mean, this is anecdotal, but you can look up like online and see videos all the time of people just walking into stores, just smashing windows and just grabbing like 3, 4, 5 phones. Like this isn't necessities. This is people being criminals. They're thugs. So the problem is that when you are soft on things like that, it encourages what is happening, which is why it's become so common. So that's why I say there's an under-incarceration problem.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from, but I also think that there's a lot of bias in the media towards crimes that are more showy per se. Like, I was actually in a T-Mobile when it got robbed, so that's like a horrible sort of thing. But yeah, I was in a T-Mobile when it got robbed. It was wild. Anyway, so I can definitely see where you're coming from. Yeah. I can see where you're coming from, man.
Yeah, and I think the reason the media isn't going to be so like, oh, look at this mom of 4 stealing baby formula, right? You know, just because it's kind of like screwed up to do that. Like
they can't really sensationalize that.
Yeah, and
whereas
like
if it's like, oh, a family of 4 gets murdered in their house, then like that can put some scare in people. People want to watch that.
Of course, and if a mom of 4 is stealing baby formula for her kids, nobody is going to watch the media and be like, oh my gosh. Like
stop her.
We have an under-incarceration problem. You know what I mean? It's like people understand that's like, you know, necessary. So, but yeah, in terms of like seeing people like smashing windows or stealing phones or kids going into stores, like oh my gosh, I was in Walgreens last week and some kid looked at me and he's like, "Yo, are you gonna tell if I steal these candies?" And I'm just sitting there and he just grabs like 6 cookies and cream Hershey bars, like. It's just people are just kind of buttheads.
What'd you do?
I did nothing. I didn't know what to do.
Okay,
I didn't want to like.
Yeah. I personally, I don't care if people.
Yeah, the party of law and order.
I don't care if people steal from large businesses like corporations. Hell yeah, like go for it if you want to. I would never, because like I'm stupid and have butterfingers and I would get caught immediately, and I also have no desire to steal anything. But it's just like if it's a large corporation, I don't care. They make record profits year over year, and they're ripping consumers off. So like, go for. If it's a mom and pop shop, like don't keep your hands in your pockets in those, because that's local business. But conglomerates, yeah, go right ahead, man. I don't care. But I can see where Sam's coming from.
Yeah, I don't really agree that you should just like steal from big corporations.
I don't think stealing is right. I'm just saying that I don't care if people steal from like big stores.
Steal from like Walmart instead
of exactly.
Local mom and pop.
I guess.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like I don't condone stealing, but if you're gonna do it in a place that like is hella profitable, you know?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, another question.
Yeah, we'll move on to another question. Regarding economic systems, and like the the big two, capitalism and socialism. Do you think that socialism can address the inequalities of capitalism, or does it stifle individual freedom and innovation?
Yeah, I don't think it, solves the problems of capitalism at all. You give the government all the power. Like, most people in this country would say that they don't trust the government, but then some of them would support a socialist society. Like, why, if you don't trust the government, would you give them all the power to regulate everything? Like, your health, they regulate that. The food you get, they regulate that. Like, the properties, absolutely everything. Like, it just doesn't really make sense. And also, there's pretty much no example in history ever of a socialist society working. So, and you look at the problems that happened during the USSR. Like, first off, they took individual freedoms away, which is technically the difference between communism and socialism. But then, at the same time, they had major problems trying to regulate price changes and things like that. That, like, the economy was just not functioning at all, which is how America gained so much superiority over them throughout the Cold War.
Jordan?
I think you're conflating socialism with communism. We do have examples of successful communist countries. Look at any socialist countries. No, we do not have successful communist countries, but successful socialist countries are Nordic countries.
Like Sweden?
Yeah, like, if you want to go like that, they're statistically the happiest countries. They have the lowest suicide rates. They have the highest satisfaction rates. They have a great income to spending ratio. Like, we have all of these statistics, not only from Sweden's, like, censuses and, like, polls, but also from other organizations outside of Sweden. And you can make the argument that the Nazis use socialism as kind of like a cover, but it's more of a misnomer because people conflate socialism with authoritarianism or dictatorship or even communism. And that's, like, one of my pet peeves when people confuse communism and socialism, because it's like saying capitalism and democracy, But yeah, I get where you're coming from when it comes to communism, but I definitely disagree when it comes to socialism. But also, it's not going to solve all of our problems. It's going to get better, but not the best.
I have one question.
I just have a quick point to make about the Sweden
please.
thing. Like, Sweden itself, their country and their government doesn't consider themselves a socialist country, so I don't think you can really use that as a point. But
that is a good point, actually. I was not aware of that. Like I said, Sam is far more prepared for this today. I have a raging migraine right now.
I just have one question.
yeah,
Do pieces of what one would call socialism, such as free healthcare, okay? Do you believe that in this country right now, someone says free healthcare and half the country says, no, we can't do that because then we'd be a socialist country? Do you believe that?
I don't think it's because it would be a socialist country. I think that people just understand that it wouldn't be a good idea. I don't think free healthcare is a good idea. In terms of giving people something for free, it typically never works. But it's just like,
No, but my question was whether it's good or not.
yeah. Oh, like,
It does not. It does one little socialist, or I wouldn't call it little, but it's like people say when you have an idea like that, they're like, no.
People
we
just
don't want to be.
disagree with it just
It
because
doesn't
it's
mean
an
we're a
idea of
socialist
Okay.
country.
I see what you mean.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
There are probably a lot of people that would disagree with the idea simply because it's socialist, but I don't think that that's a good reason to disagree with it. I think the best reason to disagree with a policy change is because it would not work. So, I wouldn't agree with those people that disagree with it just because it's socialism, even though I disagree with it.
Right.
But I disagree with it because I believe it wouldn't
You
work.
disagree with it for the right reasons
Right.
instead of just putting it into a
And-
category.
yeah, so I'm not arguing that there's not people that believe that way, but
Okay, yeah, that was my question.
yeah.
Good answer.
All right, where's the pitchforks? Start falling, make a real good cover. No, I'm kidding.
Okay, so on the topic of, like, healthcare, we already mentioned this kind of, but, like, should healthcare be accessible to all regardless of income, or is it a free market health, or is a free market healthcare system the best model for delivering high quality care?
Okay. My my stance on this is coming from a perspective of someone who is physically disabled. I am very familiar with the internal workings of the healthcare system, and I definitely believe that free healthcare would have changed my life when I was younger. Because with the current model, we have burnt out physicians, burnt out doctors. They don't really care, which is not all of them, but like we push our physicians so hard for so little money that it burns them out. And we have this epidemic of burnt out doctors. So I personally believe that free healthcare, because free healthcare doesn't necessarily mean a lack of privatized healthcare, it just means there are other options. And I always believe that options are good, because even if you decide to go the privatized route, which is still available in countries with free healthcare, without access to these things, I could have gone a lot longer without knowing what was wrong with me and doing even more damage to my body than I was doing before I got diagnosed, because I just kept getting brushed off by doctors. So I'm biased about this. Sorry.
I would, definitely say that I'm with the group that believes that healthcare is not a right, rather not that's not a right, but just I believe in a privatized healthcare system, because like even in terms of even like countries that do use universal healthcare, like you mentioned that they still have privatized systems, they actually recommend that you go to the privatized systems because of how slow the process is in the universal healthcare systems, and that's really dangerous for people who have like terminal illnesses and things like that, or even just things that you need that are urgent, So it's dangerous to have a healthcare system that is very slow like that, when it's so common to see like people that need urgent care. So no, I don't think that healthcare should be universal.
If you have a terminal illness in a free healthcare system, you're not going to be triaged as high as someone who needs urgent care, because free healthcare is all about triaging. If you're going into, let's say, liver failure, but someone is already at like the criticality of liver failure, they're getting a liver faster than you. So I can understand where you're coming from, but also the triage system, it can be arduous, it can be long, and people do fall through the cracks. But I also don't think that in instances where you have something long-term or even critical or of anything, you shouldn't be stuck with hundreds of thousands of dollars in medical bills to pay, even with insurance. And it is, in my opinion, a right, because we're all human. We're all going to get sick. Pathogens and bacteria have existed long before us, and they will after us. And they can get us sick. So we're on this planet, and we're functioning as humans, and whatever we need to function should not come at that ridiculous of a cost,
Yeah, I definitely understand that point, but I think most people would rather, have like a system where, like, I'm not saying that the U.S. system is perfect by any means. There's so many flaws with it, but I think people would rather have a system that they're able to get care that they need, so their life can continue, instead of waiting and it be free and it just doesn't hurt their pockets. Like, not to say that it's just like a minor inconvenience, because oftentimes these things cost massive amounts of money that people sometimes just don't have, and they go into debt for it or things like that. But like, I'll give you an example. I have an aunt that lives in Puerto Rico, and Puerto Rico doesn't have a healthcare system like the U.S. does. And she was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she waited so long that by the time she actually got the treatment she needed, she was already in stage 4. So it's like, I'm sure she would have rather have been able to find a way to make the payment and get the care she needed when it wasn't as bad, and like to the point where she actually needed to get surgery for it and get the mastectomy. You know what I mean? So.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I'm going to make an analogy that might not work.
Okay.
But I want to see what you think. Well, does everybody in the country have a right to an education?
A right to an education?
A right to an education. Every taxpayer in America, do they have the right to a cost-free education?
Yeah.
The answer is yes. Okay. Now, those who don't believe that the standard education is enough for their child or for them,
Have the opportunity to pay
they can pay extra to
Right,
go
right.
to a private school to get the higher quality, quote unquote,
Sure.
education. Why is there such a stigma with healthcare and not education? What's the if it's something that everybody at some point, actually in the case of healthcare, everybody is 100% going to need that from the moment you're born, even before that.
Right.
I mean, you can't live without it. Okay, and one would argue that you can't really function very well without at least some education in this country. So why is there such a stigma attached to universal health care, but public school is fair game? Is there a huge difference? The answer, I don't know. That's why I'm asking. I don't know if the analogy works. I wanted to go to the better.
I think that's
I wanted to
definitely-
go to the better minds.
Sure. That's definitely a really challenging question. I actually haven't really pondered on that. I don't know why it's like taken so differently. That's a good question.
I definitely agree, and
I threw them a curve.
no, I just wrote an essay about this a while ago. So, the way people view certain aspects of our society is obviously going to vary from culture to culture, state to state, because our states are the size of other people's countries, right? And trying to argue to a group of people, let's use the Amish as an example. If you go to the Amish and you go, we are going to get you into the hospital system if you need it right now, instead of you going to a family doctor in the community, they're going to be like, hell no, like the government should not be intruding, and they have a right to say that. It doesn't boil down to the simple things, because unlike education, where almost everybody is in agreement, people being raised across different cultures within the United States will view it very differently. Because, like, the Amish in Texas, going back to Mr. Cox, good old Mr. Cox, the Amish in Texas, that was so stupid. The Amish, like I said, I'm really tired. Pennsylvania, thank you. That's where my papa grew up. He was not Amish, but he was in Pennsylvania. The Amish in Pennsylvania are obviously going to have, like, radically different views than San Francisco. You know? Like, excuse the constant mistakes.
Well, here's the argument, and then we're going to move on from this. But here's the argument. Okay, the argument is that people, in most cases, like people, you know, if you knew that your health care was free, people might have a propensity to be quicker to abuse their bodies a little more, possibly. I could use the same analogy for school. If you decide that you're not going to come to school, or you're going to go to school on your schedule, okay, and you fall way behind and you show up, that door is still open for you, for both the building and the classroom, and the teachers and the school is still obliged to give you everything you need in order to get you from point A to point B. That is the law. Okay, so why should it be any different? Like you can damage yourself educationally and still be taken in by the system, okay? Because that's the system that we have. On the other side, but you don't hear that argument. You hear the argument on the other side. Well, if you knew that every time you had a heart attack, the ambulance would be right there and it wouldn't cost you a dime. Well, then you're going to be eating bacon cheeseburgers every day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Now, I think that's extreme, but people do abuse the education system, do they not?
For sure.
So it's like, I think it is a good. I think, yeah, it's a pickle, right?
Yeah, no. What I was thinking was, like, in terms of when it comes to healthcare, like, there are people who choose, like, a lower a lesser option. Like if I like break a finger, right? Like I can go to the ER and I can get get a $300,000 bill. I'm just kidding. Like I'm exaggerating, but like you know my point. Like I can get a super expensive bill, and then like get like probably the best care possible, or I can go to an urgent care. They'll give me the X-rays. They'll tell me what to do to treat it, and it'll be $100 rather than like $3,000 for the X-rays at the ER. You know what I mean? So it's like I think the freedom of choice is really where the disconnect is, because you have the one side that wants to just have it like free for everyone, and then it's like, oh, if you don't need it, then it's fine, but you're still paying for it, and like you think you're not paying for it, but it's still coming out of your taxes. And then you have the side who's like, okay, well, what if I don't want to use that? Like, what if I don't need it and I don't want to use it, but I'm still paying for other people to have it? Kind of like the same idea with the education, where it's like, in terms of public education, it's free for everyone. But then you have people that want college education to be free for everyone. It's like, I chose not to go to college, or I chose to go to college and pay it off myself, but now I'm expected to pay for you to go for free. When people don't really want to choose that, like they don't need that, so they don't choose to have that. So I think that's kind of where that disconnect is. You know what I mean?
All right, what do we got next?
You're killing it today.
I
Sam.
believe my co-host Cole wants this to be our last question here. He wants to end it early. So
Hey, do you see that bus? He just threw you right under.
Oh yeah, don't I got you.
so this one sort of encompasses all of the major problems that we've discussed, and it's just a lot more general. The role of government in personal lives. To what extent do you guys think that the government should intervene in personal decisions and lifestyles?
I'm not a huge fan of. Oh, sorry. I'm not a huge fan of the government as it currently is. I am not, like, can you hear me now, Mr.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, perfect. I personally do not believe that humans were ever meant to be this connected and this hyper aware of one another and be like constantly under like a not monotonous rule. I have very conflicting beliefs about the government because it can do good things, but I also believe that since corruption is so rampant and since everybody has different ideas, which is beautiful, I think it's beautiful, it just doesn't work when you try to jam everyone into one system. I don't like... Basically what I'm trying to say is I prefer smaller communities, but like not in the Republican way. Because I still believe that you should have a government there in order to protect your rights when things do go wrong. However, like the surveillance that we are currently under as American citizens, it's wild. Like there's so much stuff that can go wrong when you place it into the hands of individuals with such differing beliefs. And I think differing beliefs should be allowed, but it's just like it's very complicated. But the TLDR is I don't like how big the government currently is, but also it should still exist,
I would definitely say I agree that the government's too big. I think the problem for a lot of people is they understand that there's problems in our society and they understand that they're cultural, but since we've had such a shift towards secularism that we've looked to government as kind of our god, and we expect our government to fix our problems that are very interpersonal, and they're not something that government's ever been meant to fix. So, like, we have, like, deep-rooted cultural, societal problems that we're expecting the government to be able to heal, when really we have, the government that's not something that the government is meant to fix. It's something that starts at the home. It starts with parents raising their kids right, and it starts with, like, being involved and being a community. So it's really not something that you can expect the government to ever be able to fix. That's it.
Wait. I
have a question too when you're done.
I don't know. I'm trying to understand.
Okay.
All right, so here's my question. Okay, based on what you've seen, both of you, based on what you've seen from people, whether it's your own age, whether it's people older than you, whether it's people older than you who should be modeling better behavior than they do, and like just all the things that we see out there. Okay, I see a society that really needs to be governed.
Okay.
And I think, unfortunately, we've proven that we need to be governed. Now, that doesn't mean that they need to be in the room when we make every single decision.
Of course.
But my feeling is that government should be bigger because we need more voices. We only have two voices. We have a left and a right now.
Why do our voices have to be in government?
Because that's the only time people are going to actually listen, and it could go on record, and it could be constitutionally connected.
Right, but this is kind of what I mean. Like, in the past, like 100 years ago, 200 years ago, the voices we looked to weren't the government. When it came to what we should be doing in terms of like what's right and what's wrong, it was never the government deciding what's right and what's wrong. That was something that we knew ourselves. Like, most of the country at the time was a Christian country, so we would look to our pastors and priests that would,
but we're not that anymore.
We're not that anymore, and I think, well, personally, I think that's the problem. But
no, but
I don't think there's anything the government can do to fix that problem. You know what I mean?
But well, all right. I'm gonna sort of push back a little bit on that.
Okay.
Some people look at that as a problem. I don't. I don't see it as a problem that we're getting away from a Christian society any more than I would say it's a problem if we were getting away from a Jewish society. Why are we talking about religion at all?
Well, here's what I'm saying. If you look at the problems in our country, it's not because of government. It's not because our government isn't doing enough or because our government is doing too much. The problem is because we don't have objective morality. We don't have a right from a wrong that is cohesive among the whole. You can go ahead, Jordan. That's kind of my whole point. We don't have a right and wrong that's cohesive among the whole, so we have all these cultural differences and things that we see each other differently, which is why we're so polarized.
But that's America.
Sure.
And it always has been. I mean,
I'm not saying that we've never had disagreements or anything like that, but it was a lot more just wasn't so polarized.
Everybody was on the same page.
Right.
Yes, but that's what happens as a society evolves and
So,
as things grow. Now,
whether you think it's right or wrong that we've moved towards secularism,
it's not a right or wrong thing.
That's what I mean.
It just kind of is.
Sure, but whether you think that's an okay thing or just the way it is, or whether you think that's a bad or a good thing, then that's not what the issue is. The issue is that we're looking at government as something that it's not. Government doesn't tell us what's right or what's wrong. Government regulates, law and order. You know what I mean?
Jordan? I agree with that. By the way.
Yeah. Well, since I'm not a Christian, I don't think that it's an issue that we're moving away from Christian ideals because of course.
No,
I'm agreeing with you. It's like, but the thing is, morality has never been objective. There is no. It's like saying that. I'm trying to think of a good way to put it, but morality is not an objective thing. It is something that you have personally. Like, it's never something that will always be cohesive. Some people believe that it should be perfectly acceptable to hit your spouse and that it's morally right to do so to keep them in... Oh, Jesus, Miss Cruzius. Woo! See? Christian religion... Right,
I was just trying to wake
I said,
up
oh,
Cole.
Jesus. But, that was a shit joke. Anyway, but basically, morality has never and will never be an objective thing because we're humans. It'll always be chaos, and as we move away from Christianity, we're letting more people exist and experience life outside of the church. Because a lot of the time, especially from personal experience, being raised in a family with a lot of Christians, even if it wasn't like my core household, you're not allowed to just be. You have to be perfect. You have to, not perfect, but you have to be without sin. And sinning is such...
Fun?
Yeah.
I mean-
No, I'm kidding. But, like, it's just, like, my dad's side of the family would not allow me to wear skirts above the knee. Like, to my... like, directly above my knee, even if it was that, because they think it was too flashy. People will always use Christianity to explain away the things that they're doing as being righteous and for the Lord.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be used as an excuse for people to do evil things and for people to do nice things that can be an
before you go
inspiration.
further,
Yeah.
Jordan, can I just clarify something?
Huh.
If I were to substitute the word religion for Christianity, would the argument you're making still work?
Yeah,
Because that's what I believe. I don't think it's exclusive to Christianity.
No,
I
it is
think
not.
I think it's across the board.
We're just talking about Christianity because
Right. I just want to make it clear. I just want to make it clear we're not talking
we're
about
not just talking about
yeah.
Christians.
Yeah,
You can-
religion,
yeah.
you know.
Point real quick.
Yeah, go right ahead.
So when I talk about objective morality, I think it's obvious that you can't really say that like the point you mentioned, like wearing a skirts that go above your knees, like that's not something that that's not a moral question. It's not something that you consider like what objective morality would be. But I can ask everybody in this room, do you think murder is bad? I think we would all. Yeah, murder is
then
bad.
you can
So
add-
why is it? No, you're good.
Yeah.
Why is it that we all believe that way, or why is it that we all think that way? So, because of the religion that I believe in, which is Christianity, is that God inscribed in our hearts morality, right from wrong, that we can discern that for ourselves. You guys wouldn't believe that, but you would be able to say that you know right from wrong in terms of like murder is bad, you shouldn't do that. Doing unto others is good, you should do that. Like treating others with kindness, things like that. So it's like we can all agree on those points. Why is that? It's because objective morality exists. You know what I mean? So when I talk about a culture that has, shifted, it's because we are looking to something that is not objective to discern what's good and what's wrong, which is gonna cause problems 10 times out of 10 times. You know what I mean? So that's where my idea of government government intervention, like how much it should intervene into the person's day-to-day life. Like government shouldn't intervene into a person's day-to-day life, but we still have problems, and government intervening into our lives isn't going to fix that. What's going to fix that is changes that start at home, teaching your kids what is right from wrong and helping them to discern that. You know what I mean?
Sorry for cutting you off. My brain got in front of my mouth got in front of my brain. I'm so sorry about that. But my question to you is, do you believe in the death penalty? Do you believe that should be a thing, like in the justice system, like that should be an option?
Yes.
So you said yes, which means that you don't always believe murder is bad.
That's not murder.
There's no between killing and murder.
Yeah.
I would think.
Like
You would think. So let's say you put someone in a chair
Okay.
and you strap them down and hooked up an IV to their arm.
Yes.
In the IV bag,
Uh-huh.
you intentionally put chemicals that you know once they enter the body, they will stop your heart.
Right.
Murder is just
If that's
the killing of another human being. Murder is the way to
No.
describe
Murder-
that killing.
Murder is not the killing of another human.
If that person has done morally reprehensible things to 20 other kids, then I wouldn't call that murder. I would just call that.
No, but you said that murder we know is morally and objectively wrong.
Sure.
However, you're discerning murder from killing as a way to isolate your beliefs as being objective when in reality they're incredibly subjective. You're isolating out this instance as a way to say that killing and murder are different. In this context, and in many contexts, they're not. If you kill someone, that is the act of murdering someone, whether or not there is malicious and or judicial intent behind it. And you're shaking your head.
No,
Because
can
it's
I make
like-
can I make the
Well,
point real quick?
first, before you do, let me just say I think to be clear, we're talking about two different things, okay? murder is a legal term. Okay, yes, it is but it's a legal term. For example, if you accidentally murder somebody, it's not called murder. It's called manslaughter.
Right.
Okay, so murder is a legal term. You're talking about taking another human life.
Okay.
Killing somebody.
So
okay, that's what you're talking about. It's not. So
I
be
think
clear about that.
An important point to make is the reason it is not subjective is because what has this person done to be given the penalty of what you would consider murder, of the death penalty? Why are they receiving this this wage? It is usually because they murdered someone, right? So if a person murders someone, the act to take to penalize them for that would be in turn for them to be killed, right? That's what the death penalty is. So it's not a subjective thing. It's not like, oh well, this person can get killed, but this person doesn't have to get killed because it's right for him and it's wrong for them, because the person did something in our judicial system for them to, deem that be necessary. You know what I mean? So that's kind of why it's different. It's not like it's just us being subjective about who should live and who should die.
That's a great point that you bring up. So would you say that the death penalty would be the government reaching in to not only judicial matters, but also determining the fate of human lives with the death penalty, especially with the judicial system? Because you said, and I agree with the fact that the government is overreaching and that killing is different than murder. So let's use an entirely separate word, homicide. Because as far as I'm aware, homicide is just the killing of another human being, right?
It's also a legal term as well.
It's also a legal term, right? Like, let's use killing then. Or taking a life, because that's also relevant. Taking a life is taking a life at the end. It does not matter the justification that you use for it. You are taking a life. That is just something that is objective. The reasoning will always be subjective. Humans have this very distinct inability to remove their biases from a setting. It's why we have the judicial system. It's why we have checks and balances. We cannot remove our own biases from the way we view the world, and that's okay. You're allowed to have biases. But the thing is, moral objectivity will always be rationalized away. Like with the taking a life. If someone commits a crime, whatever crime that may be, and you personally, and if you decide that they deserve the death penalty, you are deciding that you should determine whether or not someone else or themselves should take their own life. That's what I'm saying. If you're saying murder is wrong, yes, murder is wrong in the legal sense and in the moral sense, but taking a life, when you take it to the core of that, not everybody is going to agree. People also don't agree on murders. A lot of people make jokes about murdering pedophiles. Like, I don't blame them. But it's just like you can't claim moral objectivity and then use a point that not only brings up the fact that you use government overreach as a way to say that the government reaching into our lives is bad, and then use that same argument to justify taking a life as being morally objective rather than subjective.
Yes, but wait 1 second. But actually, you can. You know why? Because this is America, and we can make those. We can have opinions about that. There are countries that don't even allow you to have opinions like that. So, from an objective stance, you can feel however you want about the death penalty, and you can feel however you want about the death penalty. Your feelings do not minimize Jordan's feelings,
absolutely.
And Jordan's feelings do not minimize yours.
Absolutely,
that's what's great about. That's the best thing about our country.
In an effort to defend my point, what I mean here is, it's like I said earlier when I was talking about objective morality. The government's sole purpose is to maintain law and order, right? So when someone chooses to do something that is reprehensible, the government will deem what action should be taken for that person, whether that's the death penalty or that's life in prison or that's 5 to 10 years in prison or that's 20 years in prison. The government deems what that is, and that's because of their duty to maintain law and order in their respective country, right? So it's not like, this is what I mean where you say it's not murder, it's a wage for what crime they committed. So that's the difference between the government saying overreaching and saying you need to be like, this person needs to be killed because the government decides it, but it's because they're maintaining law and order. And we actually, there's, going back to Mr. Collins' class, there's something called the social contract theory, which you give the government that right to do that because the government also protects you in return. So that's kind of that that exchange there. You say, okay, well, I will conform to the laws under your under this country, and in return, the country's going to protect me. So that's why the government's allowed to make those determinations when you commit a crime against their laws. It doesn't minimize the point of objective morality.
Last word to Jordan.
I can see where you're coming from, and I'm sorry for getting a little too passionate about this because I find this topic very interesting. I'm not upset at you. I'm not upset at anyone. But as a point,
I don't think anyone thought that.
Okay, good. I'm just checking because I can get very anyway, that's besides the point. Mr. Gruthius, you said, but you can, as a way to point out the fact that we can have differing opinions. I wasn't trying to say that differing opinions don't exist. I'm just saying that, at least from my own perspective, by the mere fact that, as Sam said, law and order must be kept, but the world can't agree on what is law and order, that shows that, at the very least, there is some subjectivity in morality. Like, there was a time when women weren't allowed to have credit cards, right? Let's use this example, right? Let's be stereotypical here. Right? No, I'm kidding. But no, there was a time where women weren't allowed to have credit cards, and that ended in 1973, I believe. But that seems unconnected. But my point is, we can't even agree on morality within our own laws. Is it moral to keep women from owning a credit card? Is it moral to keep people from being married? Is it moral to let segregation continue? And yes, we do question these things. The Supreme Court exists for a reason, but the thing is, the Supreme Court exists because morality and the definition and the defining factors of it are constantly changing. Because morality is a cultural thing. It's not objective. Like, you know?
Yeah, and I want to end on that point. That's a good.
Okay, so yeah, we're gonna conclude this debate. I appreciate both you guys coming out here. We covered a wide variety of topics, but I think we had a good discussion on them. Yeah, thank you guys so much for debating, and there may be a part 3 in the works. Potentially?
No, please use Google Bard instead of texting.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. All right, well, yeah, that's it. Thank you.
No problem.
Goodbye.